All right, let's get right into it. We're all told this story, right? That growing up, becoming an adult, means learning to stand completely on your own 2 feet. But what if that whole idea, that powerful myth of total independence, is actually part of the problem? So here's the reality. Right now, more than a third of young adults, we're talking ages 18 to 25, are dealing with mental health challenges. That is a huge number. It points to this widespread struggle happening during one of the most critical times in a person's life. But it gets a little more complicated than that. Because here's the paradox, isn't it? Even though so many people are going through the exact same thing, nearly three-quarters of them feel like they're supposed to handle it all by themselves. There's this massive disconnect between the support people clearly need and this intense pressure they feel to go it alone. So where on earth does that pressure come from? Well, it comes from a really powerful story we tell ourselves in our culture, what this research calls the independence myth. I mean, think about it. From the time we're little, the message is crystal clear. Success means being self-sufficient. You move out, you get a job, you solve your own problems. This script is so deeply ingrained in us that asking for help can feel like a personal failure, especially when you're at that age where you're supposed to be launching into adulthood. And this idea is particularly strong in what researchers have a great acronym for: weird societies. These are cultures that put a huge premium on individualism, which can really crank up the volume on that idea that relying on others is a sign of weakness. And that right there could be a major reason for the paradox we saw earlier, the gap between so many young people struggling and so many feeling like they have to do it in silence. So, this is the crucial distinction we need to make. On the one hand, you have independence, which is all about self-reliance. But on the other, you have interdependence, and that suggests a totally different model, one where we're all part of a network, giving and receiving support. It's not about being dependent. It's about recognizing that our real strength comes from our connections to each other. This brings us to how we typically think about mental health, which it turns out might be missing a pretty important piece of the puzzle. Now, don't get me wrong, individual therapy is an incredibly important life-saving tool. But what this research suggests is that by focusing almost exclusively on the individual, we might be accidentally ignoring the very family systems and relationships that shape our well-being in the first place. And just look at the data. The research is so clear on this. Family support is a massive factor in a young adult's well-being. In fact, get this. A staggering 87% say that their relationships were the main reason they even realized they needed help. When families get involved, treatment just works better. The family system is this incredibly powerful, yet so often untapped resource. So with all that in mind, a group of researchers in Hawaii decided to try something radically different. They decided to take therapy outside of the office. They designed this 2-day intensive program for young adults and their parents or caregivers, but they held it out in nature. The whole idea was to move beyond just talking and to create a totally new environment where families could actually start to rebuild their connections in a hands-on way. And the way they did it was fascinating. They combined classic family systems theory with the healing power of connecting with nature. They used these experiential activities, things like physically sculpting out family dynamics or working together in a garden. It was all about feeling the change, not just talking about it. It sounds amazing in theory, for sure. But here's the big question, right? Can a short, intense experience like this actually move the needle on family patterns that have been there for years? Well, the researchers collected all the data, and the results, they are pretty remarkable. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Take a look at this graph. These lines show how caregivers felt about their family's ability to function. On the left, you've got the scores from before the 2-day program. They're pretty low across the board. But then, look at the right. After the intensive, you see these massive jumps in every single area: problem solving, communication, organization, you name it. And here's the part that I think is so brilliant. The area that families themselves rated as their biggest challenge beforehand, their problem-solving skills, that's where they saw the largest improvement. So the therapy didn't just work, it works best exactly where it was needed most. So why was it so effective? This quote from one of the caregivers gives us a huge clue. By shifting the focus away from just talking, these hands-on activities opened up a different kind of communication, one that was maybe more emotional, more honest, and a whole lot less defensive. And this is what that leads to. Another parent said that they were finally able to understand their child's point of view in a way they never had before. These activities created a safe space for real empathy and new insights to come out, and that can fundamentally change the entire family dynamic. So, what does this all mean for how we think about growing up? Well, it suggests we really need to start rethinking the whole concept of adulthood itself. This all points to a brand new framework for this tricky transition into adulthood. First, instead of seeing family as something you have to break away from, we can see it as a foundational resource for growth. Second, we can use nature not just as a pretty backdrop, but as an active partner in the healing process. And finally, the ultimate goal shifts from pure, isolated independence to a healthy, supportive interdependence. And let's be really clear here. This isn't about rejecting independence. Not at all. It's about redefining it. True, resilient independence isn't built in a vacuum. It's built on a secure foundation of connection that gives us the strength and the confidence to actually go out and face the world. Which leaves us with a final big thought to consider. Our culture so often frames our need for connection as some sort of vulnerability or weakness. But what if that's the real myth? What if our ability to build and lean on strong, supportive relationships isn't a weakness we have to overcome, but is in fact our greatest human strength?